I watched that video. I've watched you on that video thousands of times.
Yeah, right on.
You know, that's a great fucking, all the videos, it's just amazing. The whole, how'd you end up with him? You had a call for?
Yeah, I just auditioned, you know, like I was just one of a bunch of guys that was lucky enough to get an audition, and not too far from here, actually. There's a little rehearsal studio out here in the valley called Mates. And went in there and like played a few songs, and then went back to San Francisco, and then I was living in San Francisco at the time, and then came back down a week later and had a sort of a more extensive audition, and then they let me know the next day that I got the gig, and it's been been chugging along ever since.
Just a sweet surfer guy from Santa Barbara, now one of the world's greatest rock and roll bands. It's funny because I've read a couple of your things and seen a couple of your, and I don't want to beat the same interview, but a friend asked you if you wanted to audition for Guns, and you're like, nah. But I heard that the guitar is split from Foo. Can you get me an audition there? That was...
Well, it's funny because, you know, like that thing, I've told that story before, and it's sort of evolved on the internet into this internet rumor
that you were in Guns N' Roses.
That I was, that I was either in the Guns or was going to be in Guns. None of that's true at all. And you have to, like, it's sort of hard to remember in context of like 1999. That was like, you know, Guns N' Roses was Axl and like a bunch of other guys. There was like no Slash, no Duff, no Izzy, you know, that like it was many years after all that. So had like Guns N' Roses in 1987 asked me to join their band, I definitely would have. But at the time, you know, I was like, you know, my buddy Bill just knew somebody that could have got me an audition for whatever sort of version of it was happening then. So that was it. And I just said, you know, I heard Foo Fighters need a guitar player. And so he wound up helping me get an audition.
Did you ever dream of being, because you came basically from punk.
Yeah, sort of.
More of a punk guy.
I mean, I grew up listening to like classic rock, heavy metal, you know, sort of stuff, and then, you know, punk rock just sort of happened along the way, and I wound up playing a band called No Use for a Name, and I was living up in San Francisco at the time, and that, you know, I'd been in that band about 4.5 years at that time, so I kind of, you know, I don't know, I at that time I remember thinking like, maybe this whole music thing has kind of run its course. Maybe this is as far as it's going to go. And then the Foo Fighter thing popped up, and it was like,
how was
crazy.
Punk in the 90s?
Punk in the 90s was great. I mean, that was the first time I was ever in a band that you know, had a following, and people actually came out to see, and we toured and made records and did all that stuff. You know, it was great.
It's funny because in the 90s I disconnected from music because of my commitment to comedy.
Right.
Like I was up on whatever you gave me. You know, I was up on Soundgarden, Super Unknown, and Bad Motorfinger, and Alive, by, you know, the albums that were hot at that time. Previous to that, I would go to a record store and buy everything, you know. But after the 90s, it was just so fast for me. 1 minute I was listening to Here Comes the Rooster, and then the next minute it's 2003, and I'm listening to the Foo Fighters, you know, Nirvana, once that tragedy happened in 94. So the later the 90s got, I lost my music, whatever, you know.
Well, there was that thing, you know, like in the early mid 90s when bands like Green Day and The Offspring and stuff got really big.
Right.
And so then like major labels went out and signed like all the punk rock bands and all that stuff. But the label that the band that I was in was on was this label called Fat Records. And that was like, you know, I mean, I guess you'd think of it as like indie punk rock, whatever, right, underground kind of thing. And it was, and that scene did really, really well, but it did really well outside of the mainstream. You know what I mean? It's like none of those bands got radio, had like radio hits or were featured in mainstream magazine or any of that sort of thing. So it was like, it was a weird time because at the same time that sound was like really big commercially, there was still this underground current of bands that weren't that never broke through that mainstream, and that was like the band that I was in.
Now, the band that you were in, you did tours, obviously.
Oh yeah,
and nationwide, worldwide.
Yeah. I mean, we toured Europe a couple times.
I know you opened up for a band. Dave was in at one time.
Well, that was when I was in high school. Actually,
really?
That was. So he was in a band called Scream. Before he was in Nirvana, and they played in Santa Barbara where I grew up, and I was in a band at the time called Rat Pack, and our band opened up for their band.
And what's touring
at
like
a Chinese restaurant? I never,
bare bones, like,
I never
touring
toured back then. You know, I never like in high school. I almost I got a chance to join. There was a local band from Santa Barbara called RKL, Rich Kids on LSD, and they were looking for a bass player. My brother Scott is an incredible bass player, so they really wanted to get him in the band. They called our house looking for him, but I answered the phone. And so they wound up coming over and playing me their new record. They just made this record that was like kind of a groundbreaking record in punk rock world called Lifestyles of the Rich Kids on LSD. And it was fucking nuts. Like, it was way beyond my ability. And I remember Bomber, who was the drummer and kind of the, you know, the songwriter and leader of that band, came over and sat there in my bedroom and played me all these songs. And I didn't even bother to try. I just said, dude, I can't play that, man. So it was like, that was my first little taste of almost joining a band that like I would have gone on the road and stuff. But it was, you know, I had to wait a few more years.
Now, years after that, when you were on the road with the punk rock bands and stuff, how was that?
It's great.
You just in a van? Or?
Yeah, in a van, you know. We had like an Econoline, I think it was, and it was like a pop-top Econoline. It was a grace. Because like I never went anywhere when I grew up. So I was so eager to tour. I just wanted to get out and see the world. I didn't care where I was. I'd be in the, you know, just on some empty road in the Midwest. You'd drive by a silo and be like, fuck, look at that silo. It's amazing. This is the best.
And you guys would just do like Whiskey a Go-Go's across the country, not
or like worse than
like,
that. Most of the time, it'd be like, you know,
shit.
Yeah, like VFW halls and, you know, the Elks Lodge, and then every now and again you'd play a club that had a decent PA or something. But a lot of the time it was it'd be pretty low rent.
So it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Yeah, that's for sure. Right. I mean, you know, the craziest thing, I mean, outside it just, I mean, there's so many crazy things about when I joined the Foo Fighters, but one of the great things to me at the time was like I just didn't have to load my gear anymore. I just gave my guitar to this guitar tech, and then I never had to see it again until it was showtime. It was like heaven.
So, like, what do you think? Because I don't know music that well. There has to be when you audition for the Foo Fighters, there's a lot of people who can play guitar really well. What do you think stood out for you? Like, why did they choose you? Like, what are bands looking for when they audition someone for something like that?
I don't know. You know, it's a funny thing because I've never asked. Like, I never asked Dave or the other guys, like, specifically, why did I get the gig? You know, I don't know. I have my theories. But I think, you know, I'd like to think that part of it was at least that I learned the shit before I came in.
Okay.
And, like, had, you know, I knew how to play their songs.
So you played their songs. Now, I thought you might have played some, like, covers or something.
No, it was, they sent me a cassette tape of the stuff. I was actually in New York visiting some friends of mine and got a call from Foo Fighters tour manager, Gus, who was like, hey, we're having auditions next week. You know, we'll send you some songs if you want to come down and do it. So they sent me a cassette tape. And on the cassette tape, you see, they had made the third record with, like, Learn to Fly and all that on it, but it wasn't out yet. So I didn't know that record. You know, nobody knew that record yet. But so it was a song off the first record, a song off the second record, a song off the Godzilla soundtrack that I hadn't heard, but I guess was out, and then a song off the unreleased third record.
Learn to Fly.
Yeah, it wasn't that. So it was a song called Aurora.
No, but it was Learn to Fly, the album.
That.
Now, what was the album where the drummer quit and then Dave had to go on and do the tracks? Was Learn to Fly?
That was the second record.
That was the second record.
Yeah. That was the second.
Just great stories, like just how Dave put the band together.
Yeah.
The first guy joined, he didn't want to tour, he split, and then he came back years later.
Yeah.
But you're still the lead. And he's more of a rhythm guy? Or?
I mean, there's not a ton of, like, you know,
right.
lead guitar type of stuff in Foo Fighters. So I always get called the lead guitar player, but I just think I'm like, to me, I'm just one of the guitar players.
It's just amazing how much the music has changed. Like, when I was growing up, you had a lead.
Right.
You had a lead.
Well, totally. Everybody, you know, that was like when I was a kid. Right. That's why I play guitar the way I do, is because I wanted to be Ace Frehley and Randy Rhoads, and, you know, I wanted to be one of those guys.
Who did you look up to when you first started playing?
Ace Frehley was.
How fucking good is Ace?
Yeah, he's the man.
I'm an Ace guy. I'm a Randy Rhoads guy.
Randy Rhoads was a big one.
But I'm also a David Gilmour guy.
Sure.
David Gilmour could take you to places where...
I mean, I liked all those guys when I grew up.
I love all those guys.
I loved Richie Blackmore was really big one for me. Eddie Van Halen. I
just didn't like his fucking attitude. Right. Richie Blackmore always got on my last fucking nerve. He can never keep a singer.
Right.
You see what he looks like today?
Yeah.
He looks like a fucking witch. Like, the fact that he's on the road, he should be shot and hung. He's not touring Deep Purple, right? He's touring something else. So. Like he let Deep Purple.
Doesn't he play like lute music or something?
He is out of his mind. If you look up what he looks like, I saw a picture of him. He looks like a witch.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
wears the witch hat, the whole fucking thing. I thought he was always. I saw him when I was young. It was like Rainbow and like the
you saw Rainbow?
Scorpions.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I never got to see Rainbow. Like that era. I mean, Ronnie James Dio for me was like that lineup of Rainbow.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous. What's the one? I forget the album.
Well, there's like Kill the King and
Kill
what
the
are some of
King.
the good songs? Yeah, Long Live Rock and Roll.
Long Live Rock and Roll. And there's that one.
Which one? Man on the Silver Mountain.
Man on the
That was the
Silver
hit.
Mountain. But then there's, but where do we go?
Oh yeah. What is that called? Is that Stargazer?
Yes.
Yes.
Stargaze. I loved all that
Yeah.
shit.
Oh yeah.
I love Clapton. You gotta love Page somewhere along
Sure.
the line in
Sure,
there.
sure.
Once you watch the live shows out of New York, you're like, what the fuck was he thinking?
Yeah.
That was 1973.
Oh yeah.
So who were your influences? Basically,
Yeah, it was like all that. I was lucky I had older brothers. My older brothers had great record collections, so it was a lot of Stones, a lot of Beatles, and then just all the classic rock stuff: Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, Deep
Joe
Purple,
Perry, another fucking
all that stuff.
Joe
Yeah.
Perry's savagery too.
Yeah, and then it sort of turned into like Judas Priest and Scorpions and all that sort of thing. Iron Maiden was a big one in our house. Rush. My brother Scott went like deep into Rush, so that was definitely.
I didn't like Jake Lee. Got on my
Geddy
last
Lee.
fucking nerve, whatever his fucking name is. The drummer's one of the best in the business at that time. I still thought it was the guy from the Police. I saw him live, and he was just fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Bazio from
Sure.
Joe's Garage was always great. I mean, I liked all those guys. What the fuck are you giggling about? Nobody.
Why did you like him? What did
He did an era.
I knew a second ago, but now it's... keep going from where you told it, because then
You know that little forehead you got?